So hi everybody and welcome back to my channel where we focus on the vagus nerve, polyvagal theory, and our immense capacity to heal and to take care of ourselves, to realign our bodies and minds with homeostasis. My name is Justin Caffrey and I'm inspired to be on this journey with you ever since the death of my son in 2010, where I went through extreme anxiety, PTSD, multiple autoimmune issues. My body was physically shutting down, my mind was screaming with pain, and I had lost direction in my life. I went into therapy with an incredible therapist who was an Eastern psychiatrist who gave up on Western medicine and devoted his time to focus on a practice that he calls subjective emotive brief therapy. I went on to train with him, and I coach people in this modality to this day. This channel is devoted to ways and means to show you that you also have a capacity to tap into the vagus nerve, into cranial nerve 10, to find a better connection to homeostasis and to realize that there is a capacity within this human being that you inhabit, where you can actually begin to heal. My journey was long. This process is hard, but my channel is devoted to helping people have resources that they can use themselves where they possibly can. And in that vein, please, if you can, like and subscribe to my channel. It makes such a massive difference. It means that I can continue to circulate this content. I release a video every Sunday, and I will continue to do that as long as you guys are here to support me and you want this content. If you know somebody who may benefit in relation to my work, then please do share this as well. Comments below are answered. I check out my comments. I try to get to it at least twice a week. If I'm behind on my comments and haven't got back to you, I will get to it. I read all my comments. So please put your questions in there and let me know what you want. And finally, just before we start, please do check out my courses on www.remotetribe.co.uk. If you like what I do in terms of the vagus nerve, in terms of fearless leadership, in terms of our capacity to recover from PTSD, anxiety, depression, stress, check out the courses. We've had hundreds of people through them. I'd love for you to be part of the tribe. So jump on over to remotetribe.co.uk. You can watch a 45-minute lesson all on the vagus nerve, completely free. It's full access to you, no cost. And then if you like what's over there, you can then join a course. So go ahead and check it out. You will learn a lot just by being on the course. So check out the free lesson and see what you think. Today, we're going to have a little chat around recurring trauma and how that can impact PTSD and what that relates to in terms of polyvagal theory and the vagus nerve. The simplest way to jump into this is to give you a little bit of a background story on me. Back in the year 2000, my sister sadly lost her son, who was 18 months old, to meningitis. I happened to be home in Dublin in Ireland that weekend. I was living in London at the time. And luckily, I got to spend some precious hours with my nephew before this debilitating disease struck and took his very young life. Sadly, this was only a couple of years before we started to inoculate kids against streptococcal meningitis. But it took Nabil's life, and that had a tragic and profound impact on my family. I was quite young at the time. I was 25. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids, but it did have a profound impact on me emotionally. And in the months and weeks that followed, I spent quite a lot of time buried inside alcohol, depression, and really trying to come to terms with how such a young, beautiful life could be lost. I should have been in therapy at the time. I took a couple of sessions and then I bolted from the therapist because we started to explore some things around my own childhood and my struggles with my father's mental health and my relationship with my mother during that period of time. And all of these things compounded me to a point where I thought, I don't want to go there. So I bolted and I thought, not for me, and I fled. Guess what? That's actually a response to the nervous system. You guys probably know this, fight and flight. So that was my flight response. I wanted to get away from having to look back on anything that I felt painful. And in particular, it would have been really important at that moment because it would have helped me come to terms with the trauma of the loss of my beautiful nephew, Nabil. So what happens in terms of our nervous system? Well, when we meet any difficult event, whether it's right back in our childhood or in our teenage years or later on into our adult life, so when we meet something new, your nervous system meets every interaction with a question mark. Is this a threat to life or is it okay? Threat to life or is it okay? That's the question that it asks, and it's a binary response. And it's important to realize that your brain has not even engaged at this point. So your nervous system is the question mark. And your nervous system is connected to your eyes, your ears, your sense of smell, your touch and your skin, and also your gut instinct. So before your brain, your cognition starts to come in, which is like your executive function, your prefrontal cortex area, your nervous system is the one that asks the question. And it creates a block. So imagine in a triangle, the top of this triangle up here is where your brain is. But down here, there is this wall, and that's the nervous system. And every interaction that comes through here must first be questioned. Is this okay, or is it a threat to life? If it deems that it's okay, then it opens up, and then the connection comes through to the brain, and you start to develop cognition. This is like a fraction of a millisecond. It's boom, and it happens. But these incredible human bodies that we have are able to make this quick decision. Now, if you go back and you have had previous bad experiences, what happens is the nervous system remembers those experiences and it files them away, and it goes, that was a really challenging experience. And if it happens again, we really want to avoid it. So when my nephew died, that was a really challenging experience. That caused me huge amounts of stress, put me into a state of anxiety and a depression, and probably borderline early issues with alcohol at a very young age. So guess what happens when my own son dies? That memory is reactivated again. And my nervous system now goes into overdrive because it remembers the pain that I struggled with the death of my nephew. And it then meets the death of my own son with huge stress. And it wants me to escape from this encounter as fast as I can. Not a pretty logical decision. My son has died. I can't escape. I've got nowhere to go. So my fight and flight response is now on full throttle, and it's telling me to escape. And of course, I'm changing lots of things in my life at this stage. I'm changing businesses. I'm changing my environments because my flight response has kicked in. And I've moved country. I set up a business in a different country. So when I look back and chart my actions, it really is quite incredible to watch that my nervous system is leading and not my brain. I can't fight it because my son has died. So the flight response isn't working. And it's almost like, the old wedding car movies where the tin cans are rattling behind as the bride and groom pull away. All of the things that we are running away from are all rattling behind us in life. And just like that, the death of my nephew was one of those things that I'd never come to terms with. And now the death of my son is also now a tin can tethered to my back, and I'm desperately trying to run away from it. But the clitter and clank of the cans is with me all the time. So something incredible happens with the nervous system. When we're in the fight-flight response, we're in the sympathetic state. But eventually, that stops working because the amount of adrenaline and the amount of stress that your adrenals are under, because your body is constantly looking for this fight-flight response, it eventually starts to shut down. And you go back to the parasympathetic state, but not in a good way. You're not in a rest and recovery state. You go into what's called the dorsal response. And it's basically where the whole body just starts to shut down. And it's almost like you're returning to a kind of a fetal state. You're incapable of being able to do anything, and you start to give up in terms of your reactions. This is quite typical response that you'd see people within depression. And the autoimmune issues that then follow can be quite severe. Quite typical responses that you can find are ME, MS, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, eczema, psoriasis, and especially if you're predisposed to an already active autoimmune, it really spikes as this happens. And this is exactly what happened to me. I moved into this dorsal vagal response. And the only way out of it was to start working on myself, to go into therapy, which I did with an incredible teacher, incredible therapist, I say, who became my teacher, Dr. Pradeep Chadha. And I worked on many of the techniques that are available on this channel. Particularly at the very start, for the first kind of 4 or 5 weeks, I used the hand pressing technique, which I'll post up above, which really starts to help the body and the nervous system just realign and move out of this incredibly stressed state within the physical nature of our being. For many people, you will need to be in therapy at the same time. For others, depending on the level of stress, the hand pressing technique can be really helpful, especially if you're going through some kind of work-related issues or stress in your relationship. That's not particularly traumatic. It can really be quite helpful. But always remember, it's best to seek professional help. I then moved on to continue with my therapy, and I finally moved through that and started to develop a meditation practice whilst also working with my therapist. Long story short, it took about 5 or 6 weeks and things improved dramatically. And then in about 6 months, I left therapy. I came to terms with the death of my son. I came to terms with the death of my nephew. I came to terms with the problems in my childhood. And as I did, it was almost like I'm reaching behind, and each one of these tin cans that are tethered to me, I take it in front of me and I realize it's time to let go now. I can cut the string and I can put it down. So all these challenges that we face in life are with us already. It's best that we start to face into them as best we can. And I put a lot of resource on my channel to help you do that, especially in terms of connecting to meditation. There's another video on my channel around the benefits of meditation whilst dealing with PTSD and trauma. And also, please do consider having a look at the courses on remotetribe.co.uk. And some of the courses over there will help you through the neuroscience of stress, anxiety, and depression, and how we can come to a recovery point. But most importantly, I just wanted to share this with you today to understand that we're not all trapped in the fight-flight response. When that has had too much time in play, it eventually subsides and we move into this dorsal vagal response where we move in and we struggle to want to be outside. We don't want to communicate. We don't want to be outside in the world. And we withdraw. I was there. I made it out. So can you. But you can also stop that happening. So when you get a chance, you can avoid even getting there. So please do subscribe, do like my content. It means I can get a video back up every week. Remember, I'm looking for ideas of the stuff you'd like me to specifically talk about. Please drop me an email at jc@justincaffrey.com. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.